Reason number 1. Muddy colors. Most of the time this happens when you're only picking colors from this area when shading, resulting in muddy or dull colors. To avoid this, you can use multiply layer. Multiply will turn your colors darker and more saturated. Or, in the color wheel, pull this slightly to the right and drag this to the right as well. This will add more saturated colors to your shading. You can also combine these two methods. I normally do that. But before you go, boo, muddy colors bad, boo, they are actually very useful and powerful if you play your cards right. Directly shading with saturated colors while your whole drawing is still a mess will just be a giant ball of confusion. Before we're adding all the pretty colors, we must build the foundation of our painting, such as composition, anatomy, lighting, shading, etc. It would be overwhelming to do all that with vibrant colors. Do the foundation with dull colors first so you can focus on these other things. Or you can also do it in black and white. That way you really don't have to worry about colors as you build your painting. But I find it harder to add colors later on, so I always use dull colors instead. To add colors, there's something called blending modes. I will explain about it later in the video, but they are really a game changer. But of course, as great as they are, they won't save your art if you don't have a strong foundation. Reason 2 is lack of contrast. This is a painting of cafe I did some time ago. This is the painting with clear contrast and this is without. Basically, lack of contrast makes your painting look flat. Like here, you cannot easily define his facial feature. I may draw a lot of characters with non-existent expression, but I'll be damned if I make their whole face flat as a pancake. To create contrast, first you must consider the lighting and shadow. The closer it is to the light source, the brighter the area is. Also, please for the love of God use a reference because the shape of the shadows might differ based on the intensity and the direction of the lighting. Yes, it can be overwhelming, yes, you might get confused, and that's why we need a reference. Don't just pull random things out of your noggin. If your drawing doesn't have dramatic lighting like mine here, you can use darker color to emphasize places with darkest shadow, like neck, under the nose, under the fringe, and under the lips. This is especially important so that your painting doesn't lose all the definitions in rendering. By the way, I'm drawing the new Genshin Impact character that got introduced recently. Her name is Arlecchino. Is that how you read it? AKA my new mommy. Listen, look at this clip and tell me you don't have at least a tiny bit of crush on her. Reason 3. Wrong use of saturation. Saturation is the intensity of color. This is saturated color, this is less saturated one. Too saturated colors can and will hurt your eyes, but less or not saturated colors makes the painting look dull. I always lean into more saturated color palette, but there are some artists who use less saturated colors in their artworks and they look amazing. That's because they know how to utilize these colors and understand the nuance of their paintings. The quickest way to adjust the saturations is by using the curve tool. Unfortunately, if you're an F2P, free to paint, user of Ibispaint, you cannot use the curve tool. But you can use one in Procreate or CSP or Medibank. And just play around with the lines here, but do not go overboard because your painting can look pretty unhinged. Number 4. Poor color combinations. Remember when you're a kid and then you're making a painting but it looks like rainbow puke mixed together? Okay, that sounds gross. I don't know why I made that analogy. Anyway, the colors you choose can make or break your artwork. If the colors don't match, your painting can look really weird. The easiest way to choose a good color combinations is by understanding color theory. Hold on. I'm not gonna give you a 3-hour lecture about color theory, but the easiest combinations are analogous and complementary colors. Analogous is 3 colors in color wheel that are placed next to each other. That's it. Easy. Even my one brain cell can understand this. Complementary is 2 colors that are on opposite sides of the color wheel. Have you ever seen a Christmas tree? It looks beautiful because its main colors are green and red, aka complementary colors. And see how complementary colors are always cool and warm colors combinations? That's because opposites attract, my friend. I always think that phrase is bunch of BS, but in colors it works like magic. There are other color combinations such as triadic, tetradic, split complementary, but if your brain is already short-circuit right now, just try analogous and complementary first. Then you can experiment with other combinations. Reason number 5. Lack of color variation. Dull colors are great for building your painting, but you don't want it as the finished product because it looks monotone, which is quite boring. It's time to bring out the blending modes. Blending modes are the layer types you can find here, and depending on what type you choose, the colors will look different. I like how Ibispaint already categorized these types based on their effect. Like, these layers are for darkening the colors, these are for lighten, contrast, etc. So it will be easier for you to choose. I always use blending modes nearing the end of my painting progress. In Ibispaint, I always use multiply, overlay, add, and color. Multiply is to darken the shadows, overlay is to add lighter and saturated colors. I also use it to add makeup, add is for highlight, and color is to add more colors. Easiest way to avoid lack of color variation is cool shadow and warm lighting. Remember the complementary color theory I explained few seconds ago? Now is the time to put that into practice. So, on multiply layer, I also apply a tiny bit of blue to the shadow. Just a tiny bit because it can be too dark. And then I apply stronger shade of blue using overlay and color. You can also use purple for this. But seriously, always add blue to the skin. Even just a little bit, it changes everything. As for the highlight, I apply red or orange in the add layer using low opacity airbrush. The color combinations that I always use are purple, yellow, and blue, orange. By the way, your painting can look a bit blurry when applying all these colors, so it's important to make sure your painting is well defined and have clear contrast during the rendering. Sometimes I like to merge all the layers and repaint all the blurry parts. Or you can also apply unsharp mask in filter as the finishing touch to make the painting sharper. Before you decide to call it a day, leave your painting for a few hours and look at it with fresh eyes. If the colors doesn't look quite right, use color balance or hue and saturation. Color balance only focus on the hue, while hue and saturations focus on both hue and saturations. I think the name is self-explanatory. And also the lightness of your painting. That is all. Say bye-bye to my mommy and I will see you next time.